If I could ask everybody to get situated, I'd like to make a couple announcements. We audio and video record our meetings, so for the board members, we have shared microphones, so when you need to make a comment, please just slide a microphone over their wireless. And just for the general information, the offices here open their doors at 8:30. So if you arrive earlier, please hang out down on the second floor or someplace. They've got some nice meeting space to rest, and then come on up at 8:30. So with that, I will turn it over to our
Great.
planning chair.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Planning and Administrative Committee to order. Secretary, please call row.
Director Andalcio? Here. Director Carey? Here. Director Frega? Here. Director Higgins? Here. Director Pang? Director Sager? Here. Director Fuentes?
Here.
We have a quorum of 6 present with 1 absent. If the record would also show that Directors Colson, Groven, Holt, Cotel, Melvin, Ross, and is Director Troiani on the phone?
I'm here.
Is here by phone, also with the necessary paperwork completed, and Chairman Dillard are joining us.
Okay, thank you. Next is the approval of the minutes from the meeting held on August 22nd, 2019. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, could I have a motion and second? Second by Director Higgins.
Is that moved by Director Andalcio, second by
Yes.
Director Higgins? Okay. Would you like a
Secretary,
roll
please
call?
call roll.
Director Andalcio? Director Carey? Director Frega? Director Higgins? Director Sager? Director Fuentes?
Aye.
6 ayes and 1 absent.
Next is a strategic plan update and presentation of the quarter performance report for the fourth quarter 2019. Jessica.
Excuse me.
There we go. How's that? There we go. Jessica Hector, I'm the Director of Planning and Market Development at RTA, and I'm here for 2 reasons this morning. The first is to present the quarterly performance report for year-end 2019, and the second is to provide an annual update on the Regional Transit Strategic Plan, Invest in Transit. And you, as the RTA Board, adopted Invest in Transit 2 years ago now, in January of 2018. The plan sets a bold vision for public transit as the core of the region's robust transportation mobility network. It also established 3 goals, which we use to guide our work. Today I'm going to walk through each of these goals and tell you how we performed in 2019 and also give you an outlook for 2020. The first strategic goal, deliver value on our investment, focuses on 2 key questions. Do we get more funding? And are we efficient stewards of the funds that we have? We monitored progress on this goal throughout 2019 by tracking capital and operating funding and expenditures. Looking at year-end results, annual capital funding was 28% higher compared to 2018. Capital expenditures was 21% higher. CTA and Metra both increased their capital expenditures while PACE saw a reduction. Looking ahead at 2020, we'll see an increase in that capital funding now that Rebuild Illinois funds are programmed. We also hope to see those capital expenditures begin to increase as construction activity ramps up. We'll continue to report on this in our quarterly reports to you throughout the year. Shifting to operating stats, operating cost per passenger trip was up 3.4% at the end of the year after being adjusted for inflation. And fare revenue per passenger trip, also known as the average fare paid, was up 2% to $1.80. Related, the newest data from the National Transit Database shows that the service boards continue to carefully control costs. We compare very favorably with our peer regions in operating cost per passenger mile, as shown on this slide. The 2018 data shows that the Chicago region moved up from 3rd to 2nd place of the 10 peer regions at 69 cents per mile, just a penny behind the front runner in Atlanta. In 2019, our greatest accomplishment in this first strategic goal was the passage of Rebuild Illinois, as you all know. Capital funding was a major focus of Invest in Transit, and that paid off last year. The new funding nearly doubles our region's 5-year capital program, with $8.3 billion programmed in the 2020 to 2024 capital program. This is great news. That said, the total funding still falls short of Invest in Transit's projected $30 billion in capital needs over the next decade. And as we mentioned to you during the budget process, our assets won't be improved in the long run if those Rebuild Illinois funds only last for 5 years. So we have 2 jobs in 2020 and beyond. The first is to do a great job spending those Rebuild Illinois funds, and the second is to simultaneously push for more funding in Springfield and this year also in Washington. We got a jump start on ensuring that the funds are spent well by working together to set some principles for programming Rebuild Illinois funds during the budget process. And those principles, you recall, embody the idea of investing quickly while also working for this long game that we're talking about. The principles I'm going to remind you include to begin focusing on decreasing the region-wide backlog of deferred projects, to focus spending on projects that can be completed in a timely manner, to provide near-term certainty while also allowing for long-term adaptability, and continuing transparent data-driven project selection. We are taking action on those principles now. The budget ordinance that passed in December charges us with developing a performance-based process for programming funds to be released for public comment in July. We've started this process and see it as a part of a continuous cycle of improvement that we want to foster at RTA and in the region at large. We think that that positive change starts by improving the processes that we have in place to be sure that our systems are never a barrier to investment. RTA leadership and staff have already been working with IDOT to streamline the flow of funding. Next, we want to update our investment framework and our programming processes to reflect the new funds and ensure that the agencies are able to deliver great projects. And as they continue to build, we wanted to measure progress and we want to celebrate it so that we'll be in a good position to continue to ask for more funding. So this propels us into this cycle of continuous improvement that I mentioned. You'll see more communication about this throughout 2020 from us. Moving on to the second goal of Invest in Transit. Build on the strengths of our network, we asked two questions. Did the region become more transit friendly, and are we focusing our limited resources wisely? For this goal, we've been measuring vehicle revenue miles, or the amount of service available to our riders over the past 10 years. The trend is clearly upward over the last decade with a 6.1% increase compared to 2010. In the past 5 years, though, we've seen a flattening out in the amount of service offered. During 2019, progress was made by all the agencies to build on the strengths of our region's network in the 6 strategic areas that we identified in Invest in Transit. In suburban job clusters, Metro partnered with Lake County partners to increase service on the Milwaukee District North Line in support of businesses nearby. Also, the Tollway continues to partner with PACE to plan for flex lane bus priority on the reconstruction of 294 a bit further south. On the Chicago North Side, the City Transit Tax Increment Financing Program is enabling full funding of the Red Purple Modernization Project, with ground broken for the Clark Junction flyover in 2019. In the Chicago Central Business District, the city's new ground transportation tax was used to fund investments in security cameras in 2019 and will be used to improve bus speeds through the CTA Fast Tracks program in 2020. On Chicago's south side, Metra is leveraging Rebuild Illinois funds for the new Ashburn station on the Rock Island line. CTA also completed reconstruction of the 95th Red Line terminal, which is a major anchor for the community there. In suburban Cook County is developing a partnership with the transit agencies for a pilot to reduce fares and provide free transfers with the Metro on the South Cook County side. We've talked to you about that before. And PACE opened its Milwaukee line, the first of the Pulse Rapid Transit services. And last but not least, for ADA paratransit, PACE launched improvements to their interactive voice response system and added features to the online paratransit reservation system that lets customers track their vehicle locations. More improvements are planned there for 2020, including upgrades to their operating software and some new online trip booking features. So looking ahead to 2020, we expect to see some progress toward our strategic priority projects. Through Invest in Transit, the transit agencies established a list of priority projects that will be advanced over the next 10 years as additional funding becomes available. There are a set of core capital initiatives mostly focused on bringing the transit system into a state of good repair with a little bit of expansion in there. Prior to the passage of Rebuild Illinois, the transit agency's 5-year capital programs only funded $2.75 billion toward these priority projects, but with the new funding, there's now an additional $3.4 billion, which is a 122% increase. That's a lot toward completing these projects in the 5-year program. So the priority projects moving forward include CTA's Your New Blue and the Red Purple Modernization, which I just mentioned, more PACE Pulse service like the Milwaukee Pulse Corridor, which I also mentioned, 75th Metra, 75th Street Corridor Improvement Project, and their fleet modernization programs, which we've talked about before, just to name a few. These and other capital projects do build upon the strong transit network that we have in support of that second strategic goal. Moving on to our third goal, stay competitive, we ask here, are we providing the kind of services that people want to ride, and are people satisfied with them when they do? For this goal, we've been tracking ridership, as well as metrics related to speed and reliability, which we know are an important influence on whether people use transit. Annual system ridership for 2019 was just over 554 million, which is a decrease, again, of 2.8% compared to 2018. The system-wide average speed was 15 miles per hour, which was an insignificant change over 2018. Metro's on-time performance was 94.6%, just under their target of 95%, unfortunately, and 2018's performance of 94.8%. Pace's on-time performance was 84%, with no target, but a 3-month upward trend in the last quarter of the year. CTA reports on-time performance in a slightly different way, which they include in monthly public performance reports on their website. The measure includes the number of rail delays of 10 minutes or more, which at an average of 104 per month did exceed their target. The report also includes the percent of rail track mileage that's subject to slow zone restrictions, which on average was 12.2% with no target set. On the bus side, they look at the percent of bus intervals that experience gapping, as well as bunching, and gap intervals hit the target and bunched intervals exceeded the target. So we'll continue to monitor these speed and on-time performance data over the year to help us understand that passenger experience, which is important. So looking at progress toward our third strategic goal in 2019, we look at changes in transit usage habits and where people are living and working. Unfortunately, total ridership and the average number of trips each person in the region takes on transit has declined over the last 5 years, which is shown on the left graphic up there. We continue to work toward understanding why this is the case, and we have 2 major surveys coming up in 2020 that will shed some light on that question. Meanwhile, we do have some insights from the latest release of the American Community Survey data from the U.S. Census Bureau. There continue to be several regional forces at work from 2013 to 2018. These include the fact that population growth is continuing to happen in suburban areas where transit's frankly less competitive. The region is aging, with the older adult population growing 17% over the last 5 years. But most interestingly, we see that transit use is actually increasing for commuters by 12% over the last 5 years. However, working from home, so people not making a commute at all, has the greatest growth rate at 24%. And in between those two is other kinds of transportation, which includes taxis and transportation network companies. So it's clear from the data that we do have that working from home and these other types of transportation modes are growing at a faster rate than transit use, unfortunately. So looking ahead to 2020, Chicago's congestion tax increase on TNCs was implemented last month. The tax is targeted at both reducing downtown traffic, which slows down the buses, and funds $20 million worth of improvements to speed up CTA bus service throughout the city. We also continue to leverage TNCs to improve access to transit in the suburbs. Over 3,500 trips were taken on our RTA-funded mobility pilots with Lyft in Bannockburn and Oak Brook, connecting to Metra. We're also partnering with PACE to explore some new partnerships in 2020 to help serve the needs of a more industrial workforce. And as I mentioned earlier, we're doing 2 surveys targeted at transit customers and at non-riders to understand more about their needs for the future. So in summary, 2019 was a strong year for our first strategic goal, deliver value on our investment, with that successful passage of Rebuild Illinois. The new funding will lead to a ramp up in construction activity on our second goal, build on the strengths of our network in 2020 and beyond. And that third goal, stay competitive, remains a challenge with the demographic and workplace changes that we're seeing. So that brings me to the conclusion of my presentation. The updates related to Invest in Transit are also in a published document, which is available online and at your desks that you can thumb through. Other than that, thanks for your time and attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Director.
I'm speaking the mic.
Mike.
Thank you. On the operating cost per passenger mile for the different regions, do they typically roll paratransit cost in there or no?
They do. This includes all of our regional services, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other?
Other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the presentation of the 2020 Community Planning Program of Projects. Michael?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Michael Horsting, Manager of Local Planning Group here at the RTA. And I wanted to provide you an update on the Community Planning Program since we last met with you approximately a year ago, share some results with you about a report that we recently released, and then provide some information to you about a process we've been going through to identify some new projects to undertake in the year 2020. But first, just an overview of what the Community Planning Program is, maybe a little bit of a refresher, beneficial for the newer faces in the room. But for over 20 years now, the RTA has been helping communities throughout the region plan around public transportation services and encouraging transit-supportive land uses throughout the region by providing technical assistance to complete plans as well as support to implement those plans. We're helping communities develop more walkable places to live, work, in close proximity to the transit system. Doing so also works towards the goals of the strategic plan, which Jessica just mentioned, such as building on the strengths of the network through, through really a land use perspective, and also keeping transit competitive in today's changing market in the transportation environment. Projects that we work on, eligible project types through the program, basically they fall into two different categories. Those projects that work to complete a plan and a vision for the future, and then projects that work towards implementing a plan, so smaller tasks. Under planning, transit-oriented development or TOD plans are offered to the municipalities around the region in areas that are supported by high-quality transit service. TOD is a return to more compact development styles with a mixture of land uses that encourage walking, biking, and using transit. These plans typically create a strategy for how to develop a mix of land uses to support the daily needs of residents and employees, as opposed to the separation of land uses that many of us might be familiar with today. Corridor plans have many similar characteristics to a TOD plan, but instead focused on a corridor that's served by transit instead of a station area. And they also provide extra emphasis on identifying strategies to get individuals to travel that corridor using transit more so than perhaps the automobile. Recommendations in these plans also frequently address strategies to improve access for people walking and using biking, and also identify development design strategies that are more transit friendly and pedestrian friendly. And then finally, neighborhood mobility access plans. We help municipalities identify ways to improve access to specific transit stations in a neighborhood or transit served area. Typical recommendations include very specific targeted pedestrian improvements, access improvements, improvements for bicyclists, and also identify some strategies frequently to identify multimodal access points to kind of serve the last mile challenges that we see throughout the region. So recognizing that implementing the vision of a plan is also often very difficult, especially for some municipalities in our region, we do offer implementation assistance as well. These projects come in the form of advancing or updating zoning codes in the region, putting municipalities in contact with developers to obtain feedback on development strategies near transit, and helping communities understand what special funding districts could do in their particular area to help pay for some of the improvements that were identified as a strategy in their plan. To complete this work, the RTA does provide technical assistance at the staff level. We also solicit consultant assistance for some of the larger, more complex projects. But we always staff is always working to ensure that each project is completed in a timely manner and is coordinated in an efficient manner as well. Just a little bit about where we've worked. We try to depict a little bit on this map. Through the program, we've provided technical assistance to each of the 6 counties in our RTA region. Approximately half of the transit-served municipalities, which we're trying to project on this map, as well as a third of the councils of governments in the region, leveraging all of their transit assets to create great places to live, shop, and work near transit. We see ongoing relationships through the program with approximately 25% of the municipalities who we helped develop a plan have come back to the RTA for implementation assistance. So we love to support them in that way. It's worthy to mention the 3 service boards, CTA, Metro, and PACE. They're key partners in this program. Not only are they eligible to apply for their own initiatives, they also support initiatives and planning processes in which we are engaged with the municipality. So they serve on steering committees and they review scopes of work and they provide very valuable technical data and assistance to the services that they provide. Moving on to the Community Planning Implementation Report. Last month we released this report, and hopefully there's a copy of the report at everybody's desk. I see a few. So this report describes impacts that completed plans have had on local development. We developed the report by asking communities who have recently completed plans through the program to identify any policy changes or infrastructure that was put into place to support the goals of the plan that were identified. In addition, we also asked them to list any new developments that were approved or under construction or construction was recently completed in their suburban TOD areas over the past year. So highlights from the report, as you can see on the screen, the respondents indicated 59 new suburban developments that were either approved or under construction. Those developments comprise almost 3,600 residential units, approximately 408,000 square feet of commercial space, and over 28,000 square feet of office space. 10 of our respondents indicated that they did indeed revise their zoning codes to enable the vision that was in the plan of mixture of uses, increased densities, walkability. The RTA was supportive of some of those 10 initiatives. Others completed it by themselves. And then finally, our project partners reported 19 new special funding districts that were developed, such as a tax increment finance district, a business improvement district, special service area. Funds from those districts can go towards supporting and paying for some of the improvements, such as attracting infill development, attracting a developer, assembling vacant land or underutilized land to offer up for development, or maintaining and enhancing facades of existing buildings that are key to the area. And then finally today, a little information about a process we've been going through to identify new projects to start in the 2020 year. In September of last year, we launched a call for new projects in partnership with CMAP. And through that call, we received 14 applications that are transit related for us to consider. Each application was reviewed by RTA staff. We interviewed each applicant, obtained feedback from the service board, CMAP, other technical assistance providers, and evaluated each project to ensure that it's feasible, that the partners are willing to partner with us and be actively engaged in each project. After reviewing each application, RTA staff selected these 9 projects, as you can see on the screen. We did conduct a public comment period from January 10 through February 8 about these 9 projects. We did receive one comment that was very favorable and in supportive of the DuPage County Department of Transportation's application to us. We did not receive any negative comments, so that's always a good thing. So this meeting today is the final step in the selection process of these new projects. So projects we intend to commence in 2020 are listed here. 3 new TOD plans in suburban Chicago, supporting the City of Chicago Department of Development and Planning and Development's new Invest Southwest initiative. Some of you may have heard of that. Creating a mobility framework plan in partnership with DuPage County Department of Transportation. Some new implementation projects in the form of a zoning code update, 2 developer panels, and then finally 1 new service board project in partnership with the CTA to develop a North Branch transit enhancement plan. So we have developed a preliminary budget for all 9 of these projects. All total, the budget comes to approximately $979,000. RTA funds comprise just over 50% of that at $519,000. We have $233,000 in a federal grant that we're using to support the work of the program, and then also requesting $227,000, the balance, from these partners in terms of a local match. So after today, our next steps are over the spring and summer to begin engaging each of these new project partners, understanding what their goals are, how the framework would look for the scope of work, identifying consultant assistance where we need that, and then we do intend to have each of these projects underway by the end of the year. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Questions or comments? Director Lewis?
Yes, I'd like to ask, on the matches, are the formulas consistent across the board, or does it vary by location in terms of the match that's required by the local municipality?
Yes. Local match does vary. So a basic match, we used to do just across the board years ago, a 20% match for larger projects. We've since changed that, and now it is scaled depending on need of the community. So we take a look at population and their tax base to determine if they're a high need community or not. And then we lower that, we scale that local match based on their level of need. So we're trying to support the work of higher need communities.
What is the range in terms of the match? What is the range, the lowest amount and the highest amount?
Yeah, highest amount is 20% still, and then the lowest amount is 2%. So.
This sounds very, very interesting. A lot of great stuff, and the Orland thing works really, really well. I can tell you from personal experience.
Great.
So how does this work? Do you do developers contact you? Do you you contact developers, you contact municipalities, all of that back and forth?
A little bit of all of that. So the idea or the need first comes from the municipality. So a municipality will indicate to us that they're struggling to reach developers and get their attention. So that's where we come into play, and we do have a good partnership with the Urban Land Institute that we've used in the past. They're a group that represents developers, and they've been very instrumental in helping us get a group of developers together to participate in a half-day workshop with these communities. And they've provided very valuable information to the communities. Sometimes it's a support of their initiatives, keep doing, encouraging them. Sometimes it's an entirely new strategy that they think the municipality should undertake. So we found that it's very valuable feedback at the municipal level to help them attract development.
Thank you.
And
It's
the
interesting.
additional point that I'll just make is the staff do a lot of outreach to municipalities, the council of government around the region. So it's not just sort of relying on a municipality to say, hey, I've got an idea or an issue I need to address. We actually do a lot of proactive outreach in and around the community across the whole 6 counties to let communities know that this is a resource for them if they don't know.
Any other questions or comment? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more further business to come before the public session of the Planning and Administrative Committee, I will entertain a motion and second to adjourn. So moved by, second by Director Fraga. All those in favor? Aye. We stand adjourned.